welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute privilege to be joined by the fabulous Carrie-Lynn Hotson, who brings her unique 25 years of experience and insight to her readers in her latest book, Knowing Who You Lead. In it, she shares lessons from her viewpoint as a HR specialist, a leadership coach, mediator, manager, interview coach. Carrie-Lynn has built trusting relationships with leaders and employees, allowing her to dig into issues, understand why they occur, and then use these lessons to generate conversation to teach others how to enhance trust, address miscommunication, and ensure employee retention. Carrie-Lynn, it's a joy to have you with us today.
Oh, I'm so happy that we finally get to meet.
Oh, I know. We've been planning this for so long, haven't we? I was so excited today, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's going to be such an amazing conversation, because I love what it is that you're helping teachers about, that piece around really understanding the other person's viewpoint and then getting in their shoes to build that trust and that relationship. Could you start by sharing a little bit about your journey so far, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's been a fun journey. I actually just listened to a podcast recently, and the speaker was talking about the fact that every career choice we've made during our life had a purpose. And there was a story that kind of thread through it, and it's brought you to where you are now. And I thought that is such a great analogy. It's true. So I went from everything from policing. I was a police officer for 17 years. Then I moved into HR to really train and care for the people that were within the service. And then I left that to now teach. I'm a professor in HR and business, and to run my own business and work with leaders directly. So it's just been such a great journey. And every single time I get to meet new people and learn their stories. So I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, I love that. And you're right, every step gives us something, doesn't it? I've learned in life that everything's a lesson, a blessing, or both. So if I'm not feeling blessed, I need to look for the lesson, because it's in there, isn't it, for you to find. So what made you make the change, like policing to professor? That's quite a shift.
It is. I mean, when you think about it, it's all about service. It's about meeting the needs of other people, identifying if there's a problem, and then helping people figure out ways to fix it for themselves, right? People are always best if we can do it ourselves and just with some guidance. So that's really what policing was about. Then I did it for my own members, helping them along their career journeys in HR. And then now with students, these are your new employees. These are the people that potentially are coming into our workforce. So it's been a great opportunity to learn from them as well, and then share some of the messages from them to employers and from employers to the newest employees. So it's working really well.
I love that. You're almost kind of doing that translation for them, aren't you?
Yeah.
Communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And knowing who you lead, I love that. What a great title, because I think that is the number one lesson in leadership, isn't it? To recognize that everybody we lead is an individual. So we have to get to know who they are to be able to best serve them. And I'm a big believer that leadership is a service. If we're not delivering something that our people need, they won't work for us anymore, because they'll go and get that from somebody else. So what would you say have been the number one lessons you've learned in your leadership journey?
Such a good question. And yes, leadership is definitely a journey, and it's not an easy one. I think that was the lesson. I think we all go into it with the same passion and purpose, but we do it slightly differently. And I really think it's about, are you willing to admit when you make a mistake? Are you willing to be vulnerable? Are you willing to get the feedback from other people and ask them who they are and how they need to be led? When I work with leaders now, I think it's just so interesting to meet a group of people that have been working together for a while and help them realize that the way that you've been trying to serve this person may not be what they actually need. We need to just stop and listen. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons. And I mean, of course, you continue to learn it every day. I learn it with my students, and I learn it with the people that I'm working with.
I love that. I think one of my friends always says, listening is an act of love. If we genuinely listen to people to understand where they're coming from, instead of listening to interject with like our opinion or our knowledge or our insight, then it's a great thing to do. And think about the last time you would genuinely listen to, how it made you feel. So I think that's such a great message, both for your students and for the leaders that they're going to become and the leaders that they interact with. But it's not easy, is it, to really listen? So are there any tips you can give us on how do we get really good at actively listening to people?
Well, a lot of my employers and leaders right now, I mean, the biggest thing is hiring and retention. Trying to figure out, what are we going to do? We have to run our businesses. Maybe I'd like to retire eventually. I want to ensure that I can meet the needs of my customers. And how am I going to do this? I can't keep employees. So I've been doing a lot of workshops and work with businesses on hiring and retention. One of the things that I'm learning when I'm talking to employers and when they're asking all about hiring and retention and how do we keep employees is what do I do? What do they want? And so I've been listening, and it really comes down to Vish, Vish. I want to feel valued. From the minute I come into your organization, through your onboarding, I don't want to just get handed a binder and told, here, sitting behind this desk where nobody's going to talk to you and read this for the next week. Or go online and do all these online courses and, now you'll know everything. People want to feel inspired. That's the I. This is going to be an exciting organization. Everybody feels, engaged here. This looks like somewhere I'm going to learn. And then they want to feel supported. If I don't understand something, if I need to ask why, if I need to learn it again, are you going to support me in that journey? And finally, I need to feel heard. That again, listen to. If I'm not feeling safe, if I'm concerned about something, if I need an accommodation, I just want to be heard. You don't always have to say yes. I think that's where people struggle. They think as soon as somebody asks a question, great, now we have to give them this. No, just think of the acronym. You just make sure they feel valued and inspired, supported and heard. You can still do that in a very loving way and explain why you can't meet a certain need.
I love that. I always used to say that people at their base, I believe, want to be listened to, respected, and understood. And that doesn't mean that you can't ever disagree. You just don't disrespect. You
Mhm.
find a way of that common ground. But I love Fish. I'm definitely going to be stealing that
Yeah,
because, like,
for sure.
isn't it? It's like we do want to be valued. We want to be inspired. We want to feel safe and know that we're supported, and that support gives us that safety. And we want to be heard.
Mhm.
Point, even if it's a no that we're getting, we want to understand why. And
Mhm.
given the gratitude of somebody taking the time to tell us why, and rather than just brush us off. I see it all the time with my little girl. She's 6, but even at 6, she even if it's a no, she just wants to know why, and she wants to be engaged with. And I don't think it changes much as we get older, does it? We probably just get more articulate at it.
Yeah, I think it's very true. And when I talk to my students, so as an interview coach, I'm always asking people, so why are you applying for a new job? Why do you want to leave the one that you're at? And they tell me things, and it's simple things like that. I came in and I didn't know what I was doing. The training really wasn't training, it was more like telling, do this, do this, do this. When I asked why, people either said, "Oh, don't worry about that," or, "Oh, I don't know why. It's just because that's the way I was trained," which is fundamental. I'm always telling organizations, if you want to hire and retain, then we've got to fix the inside first. Do you really train people? Do you have structures and support systems when they get in here? Do you have rules and policies for them to follow? People want to feel supported. Having a checklist and lists and policies, that makes me feel supported. And then finally, it's once I have my onboarding or my training and I don't know how to do something, what's the reaction of my coworkers and my bosses? Do I get blamed? Do I get criticized or am I supported? And literally students tell me, you know what, I worked there for a month and I didn't know didn't know how to do things. And then I would get yelled at or I would get told that I'm lazy because I don't know what I'm doing. And so I left. That's literally the reaction. And so I left. And they're not telling me it's about money. It's not about the shifts. It's I didn't feel like I was valued or mattered.
Wow. It's amazing, isn't it? I read article recently that said that 57% of people leave their boss, not the organization, and that 64% of people would take a pay cut if they were given a different boss. So it so resonates with that. Actually, who you work for directly becomes the face of the organization, doesn't it? It becomes how you view that organization and that company. So how do you help leaders to get better at that attraction and retention of talent and recognize that these people aren't lazy, they just need support and help and guidance?
Well, I mean, the first thing to do is also support that leader, because leaders are tired. They're burnt out. They're covering the shifts for people when they're not showing up for work, or yet again, we have a shortage of employees. So I support the leaders and recognize how much they're trying to do. I tell them that my full intention is to help you sleep at night, take away some of those worries and help you. And give you that insight that realistically, even when you've asked, nobody's told you. Even if you try to do an exit interview, they probably are not going to give you the honest reason why they're leaving. So let me find you those answers. Let me give them to you. I give leaders lots of analogies and lots of examples in my book. I did a survey like what you were just mentioning about with employees and asked them a lot of questions for the book. My statistics were in the high 70s as to why people were leaving was because of the boss. And even then, another 20% were thinking about it. So, even if they haven't left, they're still considering it. And with leaders, it's really, let's figure out who you are, how you're trying to lead. And so that's really getting the first part of the book is who are you? And then the next part is who am I? So you need to figure that out and find out and ask. And I give you ways to do it. And then who are we? Who are we as a team? How do we gel? How do we communicate? And then the fourth part of the book is the hard part because now it's so we have great intentions. We're trying all these great things, but here's all the bumps, all the speed bumps, the conflicts, the arguing, sometimes when you have to fire someone, all those difficult conversations, the trust, the respect, the triggering. So what do we do with all of that? How do we get that really working within the organization? And again, we just go back to the basics. Who are you? Who am I? What do you need? And then finally, it's helping the organization grow, which is really what organizations want. But we can't do that until we do the first four parts.
And that's so true, because if you've not got the foundation right, then it doesn't matter how big you grow, it's not going to fall over, isn't it? Your building's not going to be very stable.
It's
So
like the Eiffel Tower. It's going to fall over.
going back and getting that foundation solid is
Mhm.
such a critical part of business success, isn't it? And business growth. And we've been we know at the moment we're in the middle of a talent shortage, but it's not new news, is it? I've been in business nearly 30 years and we're always in some form of talent shortage. We just have a different badge for it. So I think getting really good at understanding who I am, who you are, and who we are is a great way of moving forward. And I love that actually you take the time to acknowledge that leadership's tough. There's so much noise. I used to joke, they say it's lonely at the top. It's certainly not quiet because everybody's vying for your attention, for their needs to be met. Whether that's the company, the colleagues, or the clients, you're being pulled in every direction. So I think giving them that space to grow and get the support they need is a vital step, isn't it, in them being able to give that support to other people.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that organizationally we always kind of avoided, right? Training was one of those nice to haves. And it was always, oh, I don't have time, oh, I can't come because I have something else to do. Or it was budget wise, you would cut that off. You would just say, no, we're not going to do training. But really, when we talk about creating that solid base to our organization, if you want to grow, if you want us to continue to have your profits, then you have to invest in training. You have to invest in professional development. Right from the beginning, let's train those, new people correctly. But then as we move up in an organization, as we're given new challenges, I need to be supported. It's the exact same thing. I need to feel valued. I need to be supported and I need to be heard. So when I say I don't know how to do something, don't just hand me a book. Help me. And so my book very much was designed that way. I created it with a workbook so that people actually could say, well, this is great, but how do I do it? So I'm trying to give you some of the how, because otherwise you just feel even more frustrated.
That's so true, because we'll all have read those books where we're inspired by them, but actually, how do we implement them? How do we actually action it? So you end up almost slightly more frustrated than you were at the start, because now you know where you need to go, but you've got no idea how to get there. But you now really know that where you are isn't where you're supposed to be. So I love that actually you're giving that actionable advice as well in that workbook to say, okay, now you've got the inspiration, but let's make it real. Let's bring this to life for you. So what would you say has been your biggest takeaway so far? I mean, you've had such a varied career, but what's been the thing you're most proud of?
Honestly, I think it was just letting myself follow my passion. And I think too often we don't do that. We stay in certain positions because we just figure that's what we're supposed to do, or I've moved up the corporate ladder and this is where I'm supposed to stay. But my brother, who's been a true entrepreneur his entire life, said his best advice to me was, you know what, just say yes and then figure out how. And I thought, what? That's crazy advice. No, you're supposed to have a plan. It's supposed to be structured. So I took him up on it and I just started to say yes. And when people call and say, can you do a workshop? Can you help our team with this? You just say yes. And you trust in yourself and believe that you actually know how to do this. Of course, you know how to do this. Um, and it's so enlightening. I don't go into workshops or leadership training or anything with a group with any predisposed assumptions. I want to meet you. Tell me who you are. Tell me your struggles and let's work our way through it. And it's just been a ton of fun. So I'm so glad I listened to that lesson that he taught me.
I love that. It is such great advice. I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said we should do something every day that scares us. And I think it is that little bit of going, actually, when you've got no plan, it can feel a little bit scary, but it also allows you to be truly present because you've not got a different agenda. You're there literally just to learn about the people that you're there to meet and to share that. And they wouldn't have invited you if they didn't know you hadn't already got all of the knowledge and all of the skills to be able to add real value to that group. But your presence is the piece that really is your superpower, isn't it?
Well, and I think that's the lesson that, leaders can expand for themselves too. I mean, you're in the organization, you've moved up to this level. If you don't feel that you necessarily have the expertise in all of it, then let's find it. Let's figure out what you need and get it. But ultimately, that's really what you need to do as well. You need to just come in and you need to listen. Don't come with a predisposed assumption of how this meeting's supposed to go or who's supposed to say what. I think we expect everything to run by an agenda. And then when something goes off and someone says something that wasn't quite the idea you thought of, get curious. Oh, that's interesting. What made you think that? Or I thought everybody was ready to move forward. Why are you still stuck? Why do you keep saying no? Why do you keep bringing up all the negative? Because that's telling you something. So figure out what's bothering them. What's the need that's not being filled so that you can bring them along with you. Because if you can bring the tough people along with you, everybody sees that. And they're going to become your best advocate because they were also your best naysayer. So it's worth it. You've got great employees. I think every employee has potential. We just have to tap into it. And we can only do that if we know who they are.
I love that. That's such great advice and reminds me of many, many years ago in lots of companies. I did it repeatedly. I used to find my biggest troublemaker and turn them into my champion. Because they would very quickly go poacher turned gamekeeper. They might be doing all of those naughty things, but the minute that they were empowered to share with you what they were, they would be doing those elements. And a large part of it was saying, what is it that's causing you angst?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that's getting in your way and not empowering you to be the best version of yourself? And how is that replicated across the rest of the business? How are we doing? I always said, one of my biggest takeaways in life was asking the dim girl question. just and everything, just being passionately curious and going, oh, that's really interesting. Why do we do it like this? Can you explain that a little bit more to me? Because you suddenly find all the ridiculous things that we do in an organization that everybody believes they're supposed to be doing, that somebody actually wants them to do it. But it's just become like legend, hasn't it? It's got passed round over time that this is how we do things around here.
Well, that's the other aspect of training. Literally, there's the training manual, and then there's all the training that they get from all your other employees that say, no, 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 we don't actually do it like that. We do it like this. No, 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 we know. And yeah, that history, that corporate knowledge, all of that is getting passed down again and again. And that speaks to the person thinking, wow, like you're really not happy here. You don't feel heard. Do I get to participate in meetings where I see people being heard? Do I see change happen because they're trying to inspire employees to have good ideas and creativity? Or is it really just everybody sits there and nods their head? I mean, what do you want your organization to look like and sound like? But again, that comes back to every time we try, like we say, here's an idea, but now we need to come back and say, but what's your comfort with it as a leader? And if you want it, how do you do it? Who are you leading? How are you leading? So it's kind of a back and forth process. As you try something, then you come back to part one of the book. And then as you try another thing, then you go back to part two and figure out who they are. And then you keep going. Um, that's the fun of leadership. That's why it's a journey. You never stop. But I think it's the recognition that I have to be okay with that too. So much of when people get frustrated or combative, it's all about status and reputation. I don't want to be embarrassed. Blaming and shaming are massive in organizations, especially if there's any kind of competitive edge. It's our way of getting ahead of other people, but it does so much damage. And it's, sometimes it's staff on staff. And so you need to put a stop to it. And sometimes it's leader on staff. My status, my reputation. So when you point out something I did wrong, how do I react to that? Am I open or do I shame and blame? And so some of the journeys can be tough, that holding that mirror up and saying, this really is what I've been doing. And I didn't realize how it was impacting you. I had no idea. You told everybody else, but you didn't tell me. Or if you did try to tell me, I didn't hear you. I wasn't ready.
That is such great advice. I remember for many years going into organizations and saying to people when I first got there, if I do something that's really irritating and really annoying, even if it's really obvious, do me a favor and tell me, because it might be obvious to you, but I promise it won't be obvious to me. And I will continue to do it until you tell me, because I don't know I'm doing it. We have blind spots for a reason. We're blind to them. So, I invite you to share with me where I get in my own way. And doing so, I hope that I earn the respect to share with you when you're getting your own way, and together we'll be better. Together we will grow because we're being open-minded, and you used the term before about curiosity. And for me, that's kind of a real superpower, isn't it? Swapping that judgment for curiosity. So when somebody tells us something that we go, I don't think I agree with that, we go, okay, I'm interested, curious. How did you get there? What steps did you see that maybe I haven't seen that allow me to have a better understanding?
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just being, and I guess this comes across in everything that you do and throughout your book. It's that being passionately curious about the art of the possible. So instead of coming with a preconceived idea or preconceived desire of what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, to just being curious, being open to whatever's going to be is going to be, and let's just go with that flow. But that takes some courage, doesn't it?
Well, and I say in the book too, I give lots of my own personal examples and lots of the places where I was trying to do the right thing, but I fell flat on my face, to be honest. And some of my biggest lessons came from my biggest criticizers. People that would I used to run a lot of leadership and supervision courses. And, it was somewhat heartbreaking to have people come back 2 months later and say, yeah, great training, but it doesn't work. I can't do this. I tried. I don't get it. And I had to listen to them and think, okay, you know what? I think you're right. Like I've heard this too many times. There's a missing key. What are we not doing? And what I realized, it was Well, I give a hockey analogy, and I say it's kind of like being coached to play hockey or any sport. All through the practice, you've got the coach there, and then when you actually go to play the game, the coach leaves. They go home. When does that ever happen in sport? Yet we do that all the time in leadership. We say, here's a book. Um, here's here's a course. Now go. Okay, you got your practicing done. Now go out on the ice or on the field and do it yourself. Yeah, but where's the help, right? But I don't know how to do it with these two players or with this team. So that's the next piece of leadership, is recognizing that it's not a case of, oh, we've done this training. I hear that, right? Oh, yeah, we took leadership training. Really? When? Like, was it in this decade? Was it with this group of leaders? No, you've added 3 people. Well, every team changes every season. If you add one new player, your team's a new play, right? It's not the same. So we have to keep reinvesting. We have to keep relearning, and we have to learn, now, what does this team look like? So I think that's one of the other key lessons is, actually getting somebody boots on ground, helping you to actually do it.
I love that. What a great analogy. And it's true, isn't it? There isn't anything else I can think of where the coach leaves at the critical point, like when it hits the road. And like you, I've heard that many times where leaders have kind of gone, well, I sent them on training like it was the cure for cancer. You were like, right. And what did they expect to get out of the training? And did you ask them what they did get out of the training? And how often have you used the language from the training in their day-to-day life? If not, it was just a jolly. So the next day out, it made a bit of sense, but it wasn't actionable. It wasn't implementable. It wasn't repeatable because you made it throwaway. And I think if you're going to invest, you've got to get in there and invest, haven't you? And that's with your time as much as your money. It's the getting in there and using the language, sharing the stories, getting in there with them and sharing how you're implementing it as their leader, as much as you're expecting them to implement it as leaders in your team, isn't it? And I love that whole part around, the team does keep changing, it keeps evolving, because as human beings, we keep changing and evolving. Life gets in the way, and we don't know what version of us is turning up today versus what version of us turned up before. And when you add that into a team dynamic, then it's ever evolving, isn't it?
Well, that's one of the things I'm teaching my students right now, is all about team dynamics and team growth, and the fact that teams have to go through certain stages. So like the forming, storming, norming, that whole piece. But every time you add a new player, that person comes in, they're in the forming. You might be really great, you're performing, you're a great team, but now you've added a new element. So what does that do? You have to go through the stages with them too. And I think too often in organizations, especially around training, I mean, we bring new onboarding, bring new people in, and then we just expect them to be able to perform. Well, and you hear this all the time. We don't have time to train. I need people with experience. This is the airplane that's already flying. Come on, get on, let's go. No, you have to let them go through the natural stages, or this team is never going to perform the way that it needs to. So I think it's just, sometimes I tell people, honestly, it's just about, let's just slow down a little bit. We've all gone at 150 miles an hour over the last couple of years. We had to. I get it. But now we do have a little bit of time to breathe. And if we want these organizations truly to grow, then we have to take a breath. Let's just stop just for a second. It doesn't take no long. And I know it's scary, but again, let's try something you've never done, and let's just see how well it works.
I love that. Such great advice, because it has been so manic. We were manic before, but we've found a new level of manic.
That's a good word.
And I think we do need to take a moment. We need to take a pause and then make informed choice, because we can't possibly be making informed choice the speed that we're going at. And we know that our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So when we're in a period of manic, we are operating in emotion rather than in thought. Whereas taking that moment to take a breather, take a step back, give people a chance to think, regroup, and move forward allows us to be really conscious in the choices we make, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's happening a lot in hiring. People are really they're in the panic part of the brain where they're, "Oh no, we need these employees." And so we put out job posts and, well, I couldn't find the right employees, so I just hired anybody and then it didn't work. And okay, why are we doing it this fast? Because all you're doing is burning yourself out. You're spending a lot of time and money in hiring and training. You're really reducing morale around the other people because every time somebody comes through and they have to train and they have to onboard this person, and then that person leaves, well, now there's more work for them. They're not feeling very inspired. So yeah, we just need to slow down a little bit and figure out what is it that causes the people to leave. Maybe it's a lack of structure. Maybe it's a lack of training. Maybe it's a lack of leadership support. There's reasons, and so we just have to find them. Because I've talked to many employees through this as well. To your point at the beginning, they will stay. It's not all about wage. If you love where you are and you're feeling valued, people stay.
That's so true. Carrie-Lynn, I could literally talk to you all day, but I'm very conscious of your time. So before we go, if you could give yourself one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Just stay curious. Honestly, follow your passion, believe in yourself.
I love that. Amazing advice. And we will share how you can get in touch with Carrie-Lynn in the notes below. And I really recommend that you get that book because it really is a game changer in helping you understand first who you are and then who are the people you lead and who do you become collectively. Carrie-Lynn, it's been an absolute joy. Until next time, take care.
Bye now.